And for analysis on the latest developments, we're joined by Professor Theo Venter, Political and Policy Specialist at the North West University Business School. He joins us now. A very good evening to you, Professor Venter, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Firstly, let me just hear from you. What's the latest you're hearing on the outcomes of the conference, the election of the top five, and obviously the suspension or adjournment for a fortnight?
Oh, thank you for having me. And just a small correction, I'm now at the University of Johannesburg and not with the North West anymore, but
We do apologize.
I am still in the North West.
Okay.
No problem. I think the biggest issue here is that the administrative capacity of the North West ANC has gone from bad to worse, and that the systems to enable them to have a provincial conference, which is long overdue, has brought a lot of frustration forward. And of course, what we just heard about the name tags being cloned and so on, although those numbers are not that significant. If you think about 700 to 800 delegates, a few numbers wouldn't make a difference. But I think in the last sentence of your interview with the previous Premier, Supramaya Mapelu, something about what is happening in the Northwest came out, and that is when he said it's about people buying people. It's about personal greed. It's about what drives the ANC. And the differences between the factions in this province is not necessarily policy. It's not necessarily deep philosophical issues. It is personal position. It is the position to be in control of a situation, and branches are being utilized for that purpose, and therefore the accreditation of branches was so important to make sure that only branches in good standing may send delegates to the conference.
And the question has been asked, why is there a difference from province to province in the administration of these elective provincial conferences, the juxtaposition of what happened in Limpopo against what happened in the Eastern Cape, what is happening in the Northwest Province against what is happening in Mpumalanga? How does the ANC that says it is a cohesive national structure find itself in this position? Does it mean the balance of forces of dissenting factions is more stronger, more influential, or disruptive in certain places or provinces?
Yeah, I think that is a very, very good question. If you look at KwaZulu-Natal, it was clear that a certain group in the ANC, a certain faction, a certain support group, mobilized very well towards their provincial conference. And you could see that in the voting patterns during the conference. In the Western Cape, there's another problem. It's the ANC falling apart. In the Free State and Northwest, I think both of these provinces are having the fallout of two political leaders that eventually were forced out of their positions, one being Ace Magashule, the other being Supramaya Mapelu, and the reorganization of the two provinces organizationally in terms of the ANC is bringing about a lot of problems. In the Northwest, this time around, with 4 candidates really contending out of about 7, most of them, especially the 4 most important ones, were basically, if you want to call it that, in the Ramaphosa camp. So you actually had a battle or a conflict or a competition between people that are very much in the same or on the same side. But I think the Northwest Province is a special case. Ever since the province was established in 1994, it had problems sustaining itself. We only had one premier in this province that served 2 terms, and that was Popo Molefe right at the beginning. But for the rest, the premiers had a hard time sustaining their terms, and we can mention several of them. And it has to do with the diversified way in which this province has been constituted. Some part of the province north of Tshwane, Hammanskraal, some part of it near Hartbeespoort Dam, some part of it in the north towards Vryburg, and some parts in the old Western Transvaal. It is still an old system that has not yet gelled to the extent that a province like Limpopo has.
Supra Mahumapelo himself speaking about the quality of the cadre who is in the movement, something that has been lamented for years now. The slate politics that he referred to, that you spoke of, what feeds that? Surely it must be beyond the politics of the stomach. And I ask this against the backdrop that we'll use him as an example, whether fair or not. The people who took the conference to court were thought to support him and wanted him back at the helm of provincial structures. The ANC itself has been critical in the past of members who take the party to through the court system. But others have pointed out it's because of a lack of ability to resolve internal strife. So the slate politics seem to be fluid, but what is really feeding them? And if it's as simple as the politics of the stomach, that says to me then we have very little hope of rebuilding a prosperous South Africa.
Well, let's start with the ANC's policy of renewal. I haven't seen a political party yet that is in trouble like the ANC and rebuilding itself out of trouble. What I've seen is that parties in trouble tried very hard to re-engineer themselves, to re-image themselves, and in that process actually failing. That I've seen. So the ANC is on very, very thin ice on what they're doing. But back to your question, the politics of the stomach is a very apt description, but I think there's also another dimension, and that is the ANC has got a very well-developed constitution with very clear instructions of how to do things. And I think what happened in this conference was clearly some people bringing the organization back to their own constitution, running to court for the courts only to show, follow your own rules, follow your own constitution. And yes, we know Supra Mahumapelo is still influential, and I think he decided not to stand because he would have been nominated from the floor, but he would rather move elsewhere in the organization, more towards national politics, but sustain a fairly strong influence in the North West
Professor
province.
Venter, I need to ask you this question very quickly. Some people may just reduce it to the failure of the ANC as a governing party, but I need to point the question to our democratic architecture. I think it was Yunus Karim who has said the failures at provincial level, municipal and legislative, cannot just be said to remain there, but they are a reflection of the inability to be effective of the National Council of Provinces. What is your point of view?
Yeah. The provinces, the establishment of 9 provinces was a compromise made at CODESA. The provinces are not necessarily functioning like they must. There's a very good argument that we can make the provinces smaller. There's also a very good argument that the provinces should actually just be administrative units and not political units. So we have created this middle level of politics which has its own difficulties in the country. So, but I think most importantly, the ANC, if ever there was a transformation, the transformation is about the ANC moving from an organization that refers to itself as a freedom organization, as a liberation movement, to that of a modern political party. And several of its national leaders have spoken about that we should adopt the modern style of a political party where we can function like a political party. But at the moment, the ANC is kind of ambivalent. It wants to be the one. If it speaks ideologically, it wants to be the other. when it needs efficiency and things that go along with that. So therein lies the big renewal of the ANC if they succeed with that.
And just to wrap up, the issue of who comes in to lead the provincial structures of the North West province, going beyond this elective Congress to the one in December. Surely those who need to steer the province properly would need to have an acute understanding of what bedevils it, beyond the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Do the current crop, in your view, have a nuanced understanding of the challenges ahead and how to deal with them?
I think so. I think, and I've been exposed to some of the intricate matters in this province in terms of strategic decision making, finances, and so on. I think the political leadership is well aware of the limitations. They're well aware of the priorities of what should happen, what shouldn't happen. What is difficult is to get a political grip onto the situation through the political party and implement the decisions that they took. And I think that will also be the big challenge in December. Doesn't matter who gets elected. What is needed in South Africa is less plans and less think tanks and less commissions, but much more implementation. Just do the job.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Thanks for your time and your insights, Professor Theo Venter, political and policy specialist who is at the University of Johannesburg.